Hi, I'm Aron Ra, and I took a left at the valley.
I know we shouldn't have to scream that we're atheists. You know, we don't have non-astrologers and all that. But with religious people taking over the world, I mean, we can either speak up or be pushed into a corner.
I'm proud to be an atheist, a skeptic, a non-believer, an infidel, a heathen. I call it how I see it. I say it's ignorance and you just call it faith and unsubstantiated claims. That's something to be ashamed. I'm an atheist.
From the new Trump Tower in Abbotsford, BC, this is Left of the Valley. My name is Kevin, and trust me, I know hosting. I am the best host. No one hosts better than me. Joining me as usual is the huge team that makes the podcast world great again. She's certain to build a wall to keep history contained. Nancy.
Ooh, just remember, don't throw stones against our glass wall.
He's been tweeting all night about his favorite steak brand, Tyler.
You really grabbed that intro right by the...
I was about to say that. And he's even more willing to grab you by the hand, even if you won't let him, because he's loaded. Kevin.
Hi, I'm Kevin Sawatsky, and I took a right at the valley. That's why I'm late.
Guys, welcome back. I hope you had a great week. I will say, first of all, I hope you guys went out there and thanked the veteran, November 11th.
Absolutely.
I like to call it Thank a Veteran Day.
Wore our poppies faithfully and
wear
proudly.
a poppy and all that. And
You bet.
Definitely.
there's something that I like to point out, that our generation, well, maybe the boomers in some aspect, but the generations after, Generation X for sure, and the millennials and all that, probably two of the only generations in time that never really had to go to war. And that's something that a lot of us don't think about. And I really hope that you do, and you do pay some respect to some of these soldiers.
I pretty much just traumatized my 6-year-old by showing her the first 15 minutes of Saving Private Ryan and a few other things.
Yeah.
Hyper realistic, yeah, for sure.
That's one movie I just couldn't go to. I read about it and I thought, I'll spend half the time with my eyes closed and my head.
The first 15 minutes is pretty graphic, but the worst scene in the movie, if you guys remember the movie, that guy with the knife that's driving the knife slowly to the guy's chest and telling him
brutal.
Shh at this. Oh,
Well,
I actually turned my head when I saw that. I just could not stare at it.
You know what somebody said to me the other day? They don't wear a poppy because they don't support war. It's like, you are totally missing the point here.
Yeah,
I said this the other day. I said, you can disagree with the war and still respect the soldiers.
And let's face it, the soldier is not just there for war times either, right? And there's a case of ecological or disaster of any kind, the soldier does come out to help.
Absolutely.
So the soldier is not just there to kill people.
And think about Vietnam. Like, they came back and they got shit on. And
well, that's in the States.
Yeah.
We didn't.
No. I'm
I'm
trying to make a point here, which is that the Vietnam War was absolutely ridiculously stupid. But a lot of those people were either drafted and forced into it, or they were just simply ignorant, didn't understand the whole political climate and showed up. So I still give them a lot of respect. Same for Iraq or Afghanistan or anything like that.
Yeah, we do have a tendency to think, when we think veteran, we think World War II, and we don't think too much about the Korean War, the Afghanistan War, and all that. We don't think much about these veterans. For some reason, they're like in a different category, and that's unfair to them. Nancy, you had a bit of a mishap happening in your week. You want to talk about this?
Oh, well, I don't know whether you'd call it was it a hijacking?
Yeah, I guess it is.
Or for the first time in my life, I had a car stolen while it was locked
I
and
can't believe
parked
that.
in my carport.
Home.
It's the most surreal feeling in the world to look at where your car used to be and you don't see it, and it's like, wait, I'm looking at the wrong spot. And then you feel, no, my vision has suddenly disappeared. No, oh my God, there's no car there. And once you get over that initial shock and get yourself into solution mode, it's okay. But it really was a shocker. I have no idea.
And of course, you went out there to check out your car because I'm assuming you were heading somewhere, and then you just looked at it and your car's gone.
Well, I wasn't heading anywhere. Actually, I had crossed the street, and I was looking back where my car is parked because I can't see it from my my residence, and that's when I saw it. It was like across the street.
Oh, when
Wait a
you
minute,
didn't see it.
There's no car. And I thought, no, I know I didn't lend it to anybody. I know nobody's got the keys.
It was an Autobot.
So, yeah.
That's right.
Something.
It went back
Anyway,
to Cybertron.
in 7 days, the insurance kicks in, and they give me a check to find a new one, and there was nothing valuable in there except the car itself, which was a nice, Matrix
Well,
XL.
I'm going to be not too so polite. I'm going to say, if there's somebody out there that I doubt one of our listeners, but if you got Nancy's car, fuck you, okay? Fuck you, asshole. Bring back the car.
I have a confession, Nancy.
Jeez.
I'll bring it back.
I had to show him where to go because I was with him.
I knew it was you, Tyler. We were just hoping you'd self-confess so he wouldn't have to beat it out of you.
All right. And we got to talk about the elephant in the elephant in the room. The elephant in the world. The election of Donald J. Trump.
Was there an election somewhere?
Yeah, well, I thought it was a gag at first.
Oh.
Nancy, like I said, Nancy, you and I have disagreed, and I don't want to be that dick, but I told you so.
Oh, man.
God, I can't believe I was hoping to be so wrong about this.
Well, you picked up some of the signs. I think, in the U.S., the pollsters, the pundits, the reporters, not everybody, but most of the people absolutely read this election. It was a bizarre election, and they read it the wrong way.
We'll be talking about this for a long, long time.
Yeah.
A few numbers. There was 7 million less votes in this election than there was in the last election with Barack Obama versus Mitt Romney. 44% didn't vote at all, which ironically is about the same number of independents. So if you think picture a pie chart in your mind, 44%, that's almost half the pie chart. The other half, you would have a quarter of that, a quarter of the whole pie chart would be voting Democrats, and the other quarter voting Republican, and the little slivers at the bottom are like the Greens, the Libertarians, and all that. I truly feel that when Hillary, and I'm not going to match my words here, stole the nomination from Bernie Sanders, the Bernie or bust, all the people that voted Bernie basically said, screw you, we're not doing this.
Yeah.
And I think that's what happened here.
He was supportive of it,
looking at, I know I'm catching you off guard here.
No, of course.
But compared to the 2008 and the 2004, are the number of people that didn't vote about the same, or is this drastically different?
No,
I haven't looked.
In 2008, when Barack Obama came in, the turnout was way higher on the Democrat side. The Republican numbers are consistently the same, which is what leads me to often say the only way a conservative can win in this day and age, because let's face it, most of us are progressive by nature. The only way conservatives win today in elections is if people stay at home.
Yeah.
And
voter apathy.
Of course, they have their base that always come out. Their base always comes out. But there's still about a quarter, maybe of the third of all the electorate. And this is Canada and the U.S., the same thing. If the Conservatives win, it's because the Democrats and the progressive-minded liberals, all that, don't come out to vote. And if they don't come out to vote, it's because they're not inspired by their candidate.
And the other thing that has to be taken into account in the South is voter suppression.
Yes.
If voters don't come out, or they can't come out, or they're intimidated, then it's skewed toward the conservatives, and that's what they do. They know that they only win if, I use a Donald Trump word here, if it's rigged. If it's rigged against the people of color, old people, and students. That's the only way they can do it.
There's a solution to this, though, I think. I'd really, really like to see internet voting being more prevalent, because the other day we had a story about somebody shooting at people at Democratic voting stations and whatnot. So if you think about it from your point of view, I mean, a lot of people are just lazy. They had this exact same thing with vaccines, where they made it easier for people to get vaccinated, so they're not so damn lazy, right? They made it so they had to go down and register to not be vaccinated. They're like, well, shit, I got to leave the house anyways. So let's try to make it easy. If people are able to vote at home on their smartphones or whatever, then they're going to be more inclined to obviously do so, simply out of laziness, and they don't have to worry about getting shot at by crazy people.
Well, I have a tendency to disagree with you there, Tyler, because voting electronically has been nothing but problems in the States, especially with fraud. The reason why we still have paper ballots in Canada is because we've avoided that.
it would need to be regulated really well.
It would
in
need
order
it
for
would
to be
need
even
it would
feasible.
need something that
Yeah, I
just,
think it could be an option, but in Washington State they do it by mail.
Alaska, they do it by email.
Well, we could inject chips
But
into ourselves and vote with that.
Tyler, with all due respect, you're assuming everybody has a smartphone and everyone has access, and
My
not
phone ain't
everybody
that smart.
does, especially low income. People are,
Well, they have
at that point
they have fax options as well in certain states. So
Fax machine.
just make it easy for people to do that, so they don't have specific positions. Like if you have to go down to the library to do it or something, fine. But once you say, "Here, look, everybody, this is where the Democrats are voting," crazy people are going to show up and start shooting at them, and that's exactly what happened.
The other easy ways is that you register everybody in high school, you register everybody at birth, and then it kicks in at 18, so that there is no registration process. It's just automatic.
Or vote by thumbprint.
Yeah, but then they still don't
exactly.
have to physically leave their house and
Yeah.
go down there and do it, because a lot of them won't.
If the country wants to have everybody vote, they will find a way to make it easy for everybody to vote.
Well, and that argument doesn't make sense anyways. It's like saying, if you have internet voting, there's going to be fraud. And here's my evidence. Because there's fraud already when people are doing this. So I understand that the paper ballot thing works, but the downsides is putting people in danger and not getting people to actually vote. Like, we're talking almost half of the people. So just because there's downsides to both situations, you got to kind of weigh the pros and cons. So I'd rather people vote from home and be safe and actually vote than potentially be in danger and just not vote at all, because then we end up with people like Trump.
we could also do like Australia as well and actually make it mandatory to vote.
That would be good.
I personally think we should.
Yeah, as long as we're not setting up places saying this is where all the liberals are,
Yeah. A couple of numbers that might interest you as well. Apparently, only 6% of Americans trust the mainstream media.
Only
And
6?
Only 6%. So that tells you that 94% of Americans don't believe the polls when they come out from the mainstream media. Michigan, which is one of the states that basically sealed Hillary's loss, 90,000 voted. Some of the votes were counted. 90,000 of them were people voted but left the president blank. In other words, because when they vote, they don't just vote for the president; they also vote for other positions in the district. So they do a whole bunch of votes at the same time. But 90,000 people voted for all the other positions but left either Hillary or Trump blank.
Does that
And that
disqualify
made
the
a
ballot?
significant
Of
difference.
course it does, yeah.
Do they rip the ballot up because it's not complete?
No, they count the other
It
votes.
just doesn't count as for president.
And Hillary in that state lost by 11,000.
Yeah, you don't have
So
to
that
vote.
makes a significant difference.
Yeah.
They said, these 90,000 people essentially said, I can't vote for either one of these people.
Or the people who wrote in Bernie or whatever that wasn't a viable
Apparently,
option.
close to 7% actually of people voted for Bernie just as a write-in. So that's interesting. I think Hillary's platform was just weak. I mean, what was her message essentially? I'm not Trump and I'm a woman. And I think that just didn't appeal to people. 15 of the Bernie states during the primary that Bernie won went to Trump. That's an interesting number,
So
too.
basically, that was a non-confidence vote for Hillary.
Yeah, it totally was. It totally was.
And I read something interesting the other day, which makes sense, that there seems to be a bit of a correlation between the previous history. So what I mean is, when you have a liberal president, a Democratic president, whatever, for 2 terms, the liberals become kind of lazy.
Yeah.
And the Republicans get super motivated. You
Yeah,
know what I mean?
exactly,
And
exactly.
and vice versa. I mean, I understand Reagan was president for 2 terms and then Bush got elected, but that's kind of an anomaly. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's almost like the pendulum swings on the other side all the time, right?
Yeah.
Yes, I mean, it balances. I'm going to disagree with you a little bit. I think Hillary...
There she goes, disagreeing with me again.
That's right. That's half the fun of the show. We can disagree and enjoy everything.
And still be friends.
Yeah, no blows were placed
No, I'm
during
not taking you. I'm
during
gonna
the
kick my ass.
recording of this podcast. But Hillary did talk about policies, and she did put them on her website, and she did go into detail about some of the things. But she was sidetracked, I think, because of the negativity that was exchanged, and also the damn emails, as Bernie says.
Yeah.
But she did go into her policies. She,
I'm reminded of 2008 when Hillary was running against Barack Obama, and Bill Maher, comedian Bill Maher, said the reason Obama gets in is because he doesn't have the baggage. He's such a new face; people haven't had time to know, and that's a plus in being elected. And Hillary has been there for so long.
Well, yeah, no
No
skeletons.
expectations,
No
right?
skeletons, exactly. Which is the irony of it all is now there are huge protests happening because of Trump's election, and fairly violent too. Which
And you know what? There would have been if
Yeah,
Hillary,
maybe, yeah.
if Hillary had got in, you would have had the Trump supporters lock her up, and Trump would have been out there saying that it's been rigged.
Absolutely,
And
absolutely.
Because the country is so divided.
It is.
That whoever won has to face the consequences of the wrath of the other side.
But this didn't used to happen 20 years ago, right?
But there wasn't the polarization. It was about 20 years that this started.
Yeah.
But when the evangelicals took over the base and Newt Gingrich declared his contract with America, that's when they glared at each other. Both parties would glare at each other from either side of the aisle rather than talking and going out afterward for a drink and figuring out the solutions.
I mean, seriously, what can you expect from a country where 25% of the people think the sun goes around the earth? Like,
Yeah, that's true.
What are you talking about?
This
It
is
doesn't?
No, that's a real statistic.
the part of the problem is that you have one person who is extremely educated when it comes to politics and economics, and then you have Joe Blow, complete moron, on the other side, and they get an equal vote. And that's a problem. I'm not saying you can necessarily do anything about it, but it kind of makes sense when you look at America's education system and then you look at, Trump being elected. I'm like, holy.
Yeah, idiocracy is almost a real thing now.
Well, you need to teach critical thinking because honestly, all this stuff kind of comes out. Like the FBI should have kept their damn mouth shut until all this shit was over because they said, oh, email. Oh, never mind. It's nothing. Yeah, too late. Damage done. You got these idiots out here who have no critical thinking skills. As soon as they hear that she's being investigated for a second time, she's automatically guilty, right? So,
well, I don't know about you, but I think my presidential candidate, if I was an American, I wouldn't want my presidential candidate to be investigated on anything.
Well,
I'm sure nobody's like completely perfect, but if you're running for president, you should have a cleaner portfolio than mine.
you can make allegations
Well,
about anything, though, right?
In theory, I agree with you, but in this day and age of
Barack Obama is not an American citizen.
Guerrilla politics. And I think it goes along with the litigious society because people are so quick to sue each other. We're very quick to oppose rather than sit down and have a discussion and find a solution. I know that doesn't have anything to do with being investigated, but that has to do with the schism. It absolutely does.
Well, we're falling behind, so I got to get moving here. We'll talk some more about
Wait, one last thing.
No!
One last thing. Did you guys see Justin Trudeau's criticism that I posted about Donald Trump? He didn't name him specifically. It was in the Maclean's magazine, and he was just saying that we can't do what they're doing and run on a fear campaign.
And that's what I hope doesn't happen here.
I'm just loving Justin Trudeau more. I didn't vote for him, but I'm just loving that guy more and more and more every day.
That's what concerns me because I don't want Trump-style politics to come to Canada. And right now, there is no head of the Conservative Party. And one of the candidates that would like to run for the head of the Conservative Party, Kevin O'Leary. Remember him?
Oh, no. Is that the rebel guy?
No, that's Ezra Levant. Kevin O'Leary is the guy from Dragon's Den. And he's exactly like Trump. He's one of those blowhard, fuck you in your face kind of guy. And I hope he doesn't bring that kind of politics.
Is it like the Milton Friedman philosophy?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Oh, God, no.
Well, anyway, Nancy, you all set to go?
All set. And it's time for this day in history, which, as we know, is a roundup of those events and people who altered and illuminated the days between November the 7th to November the 13th. So November the 7th is October Revolution Day in the Soviet Union.
Yes. Oh, apropos.
Well, yes, but it's November 7th, and yet, those of you who were listening, I said October Revolution Day. That's because the revolution, the red tide, the revolution happened under the Julian calendar, and when they switched to the Gregorian calendar, then it became November, so that's why they
That's
still
interesting.
call it. Yeah, that's why they call it October Revolution Day, but it's celebrated on November the 7th. Just one of those weird things. We've had several stories where people lost time and thought they had been robbed of days. Right?
Yeah, that happened to me last week,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. So an interesting story on the 7th has to do with a man who died on that date, Edward Arthur Wilson. He was also known as Brother 12. And the 12 in Roman numerals. He wasn't Brother 12 just, with the words. He's an interesting character because he actually has to do with the history of Vancouver Island, believe it or not. And he lived, actually he was born in England and traveled the world as a mariner and studied religions, and he prepared himself by his own account for a destiny that was revealed to him in a vision in the south of France in the autumn of 1924. So he attracted a devoted following at that point, but actually he had a group of very wealthy and socially prominent individuals, and he took the name Brother 12 from a esoteric whatever you call
it
it,
has to do
very
with
spiritual,
Jesus, 12
it had to
disciples,
do
that
with,
kind of stuff.
yeah, it had to do with societies of 12 and things like that. Are very, very far out.
Where's
So-
Dan Brown in his novels when you need him?
Yeah, so he established what he called the Aquarian Foundation in 1927, and the group's beliefs were based largely on the teachings of a theosophical society, which went into the esoteric and the spiritual and how it all came about and so forth. It was not really a nutty society, but they were sort of on the fringe of spiritualism. So he encouraged his followers to build homes in his colony called Cedar by the Sea on Vancouver Island, near Nanaimo. Have you ever heard of Cedar on the Sea? It's near Nanaimo,
I've not.
someplace. So he moved, and he had a goal of wanting to create what he called an ark, which was a self-sufficient community independent of the outside world. So they acquired additional property on Valdez Island and De Courcy Islands. Are you familiar with either one of those?
No, I'm not.
No, I'm not either. So it was interesting to hear about the history of Wilson, or Brother 12. Well, he got people, when he moved there, he had about 1,200 different followers, and some of them from the States. And Wilson himself was a very controversial character. He had many mistresses. He delved into politics in the U.S., where he approved of the KKK and the anti-Semitic. I mean, he wasn't what you call a demagogue, but he felt that he was in touch with some of the Egyptian gods, and he took on some of their characteristics. And
You sure you didn't pick this from Trump's cabinet?
it came to mind as I was reading this, that they had a lot in common, but I don't know whether Trump, I don't know whether orange hair and Egyptianism go with Trump. We can leave Trump out of this. We'll leave him out of the conversation. But anyway, things got more and more bizarre, and Wilson wanted everything, in terms of the money, he wanted everything in gold. And so he had like 30, 40 pots of gold, and he buried them on De Courcy Island, but they've never been found yet. They're still somewhere. The people are still looking to see if they can find.
They're after
those
Lucky Charms and they pot of gold.
Yeah, so he became involved in politics, and then when he came back to De Courcy Island and Cedar, because he was having all these different mistresses and hearing voices, the group began to split apart, and he had a number of different lawsuits, and things really got nasty. The way they usually do, when you have people like this leading groups, they tend to degrade because they become more and more fringe and more unhinged, I guess. So an insurrection developed within the ranks of the colony, and because he claimed that he was part of that he had been reincarnated from the Egyptian gods and so forth and so on. So then they also accused him of the misuse of of funds and all of these different affairs. So the Aquarian Society was legally dissolved in 1929, but he continued his work with his followers who had remained loyal to him. There weren't many, but there were some. And he got a number of new recruits. So as time passed, he became increasingly dictatorial and paranoid, and he had a mistress, and they decided, because of all of these problems, that they would leave Nanaimo. And so he got in his boat, a sailboat called the Lady Royal, with his latest mistress, and they escaped from Nanaimo, and rather than appear in court and deal with all of the mess, he was reported to have died. And it's suspected that he actually faked his own death, because there were reports that he had been seen in Switzerland.
Sounds like the type.
Yeah, but this is the first guy that I know of that is our own, well, not homegrown, but a guy who actually had one of these colonies in Canada, and that's what makes them so fascinating. Yeah. And there are some artifacts in the museum in Nanaimo, so anybody in that area, if you want to know more about them, there's been books, and there have also been documentaries written about by the 12, but don't look for the word 12, look for XII. Interesting guy. November the 9th was World Freedom Day, and in 1861 that was the first documented football match in Canada, and it was played at University College in Toronto. November the 10th is Heroes Day in Indonesia, and in 1793 France ended the forced worship of God, and we've talked about that before.
Yes, we have.
November the 11th, of course, was Remembrance Day, where we talked about it at the beginning of the show, and we all wear our poppies and honored the end of World War I. And in 1930, this is the other really interesting story for this week. In 1930, a patent was awarded to Albert Einstein and Leo Szilard for their invention, the Einstein refrigerator.
Wow!
I bet you didn't see that one coming.
Imagine if you had one of those today.
Yeah, well, from 1920s, this is how it happened. From 1926 to 1933, Einstein and his partner collaborated on ways to improve home refrigeration. So they were motivated by contemporary newspaper reports of a Berlin family who had been killed when a seal in their refrigerator broke and leaked toxic fumes into their home. So Einstein used the experience he'd gained during his years at the Swiss Patent Office to apply for valid patents for their invention in several countries. So the two eventually were granted 45 patents in their names for 3 different models. The refrigerator wasn't immediately put into commercial production. The most promising of their patents was bought up by the Swedish company Electrolux. So there's a
link between Electrolux and Einstein.
Electrolux and refrigeration and Einstein. And if you saw that, as a triad where they'd say, how are these three linked? You'd never ever think, but now you do. You could win any trivia contest.
See, you learn so much on the show. You learn
so much. November the 12th was Constitution Day in Azerbaijan, but that's only because it's an excuse to say Azerbaijan. No other reason. And that, dear listeners, brings to a close another passing parade of interesting, mundane, unusual, and trivia-winning contests, occasionally bizarre events, and people that make up this day in history.
Thank you so much, Nancy. Interesting as usual. And we'll be right back right after this.
Hi, I'm the Supreme Irreverend Dr. Randy Tyson from the Legion of Reason Diversion. Join me and my co-hosts, Christine Shelska, Twyla, and Nate Phelps, as we explore issues at the intersection of atheism, humanism, and skepticism. Topics range from alternative medicine to the interference of religion in public policy. We often have special guests to help us understand the topic du jour. Previous guests include biologist Jerry Coyne, ex-Muslim author Ali Rizvi, philosopher Peter Boghossian, and the late physicist Victor Stanger. You can watch us on the Legion of Reason YouTube channel or subscribe to the audio version through your favorite podcatcher such as iTunes or Stitcher. And don't forget to like the Legion of Reason Facebook page.
What is secular humanism?
Critical thinking.
Knowledge is freedom. Freedom from ignorance and its offspring, fear.
The BC Humanist Association has been active in the Vancouver area for over 25 years. We offer a friendly and welcoming place to make new friends, as well as free educational lectures. We invite you to join us any Sunday at 10 a.m. in the Oak Ridge Senior Center. Please visit our website for more details, bchumanist.ca.
Right, and this music can only mean one thing. Our good friend Aron Ra is joining us once again. Aron, thank you so much for being with us.
My pleasure. Happy to be on.
Excellent. Aron, you've become like almost a fixture of the show. Now, this is your third appearance on our show, and we always enjoy absolutely having you on. But today we're talking about your book that just finally came out.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Foundational Falsehoods of Creationism. I was just checking the stats on that. It's for a first book. I'm kind of scared. It's Amazon has it listed right now around the top, ranked at 10,000 out of 8 million.
Fantastic.
Oh,
That's not bad.
great.
And it's been sitting around there for over a month.
Well, that's pretty good. That's pretty good, especially for a book that, atheism is not a mainstream thing. So for it to be
way better than my book.
Yeah, that's right.
I told you that parrot was going to go off.
Oh, there we go. There's a parrot.
I know this is terribly unprofessional, but hang on.
Polly wants a cracker?
So you're going to hear a gunshot in about 2 seconds.
My friend's parrot used to call the dog into the kitchen where it wasn't allowed in the mom and the dad's voice, and then scold it when it got there. They're evil.
Nobody see
Pure
Cheech and Chong just shoots the damn bird. Pedro not here.
So, Aron, your book is doing very well on Amazon. How much criticism, or have you received any criticism about it? Because you're dealing with a very sensitive subject, especially in your neck of the woods.
Well, so far, the critiques, if you look at the reviews have been shining. There's only one really negative review that has anything to do with anything I said, and that was from somebody who was not a confirmed buyer, somebody who obviously did not buy the book and clearly did not read it either. Yeah. Because, it is a creationist who's making the comment that, basically he's just reciting the falsehoods. If you read the reviews of my book, there's one guy in there who says that, how come there's no transitional species? Dude, chapter 9. Buy the book, read it.
Yeah, obviously he didn't read that book.
But it's so much easier to do a review if you don't read the book. Then you're not limited by the facts. I mean,
that's
come
right.
on.
Hey, Aron, you could show them the fossils of like a pupa and a caterpillar and a butterfly, and they'd still ask for transitional fossils.
And coincidentally, we have those. But
Aron, you did a video series about this, and now you have a book about this. First of all, I have nothing but the tremendous amount of respect for you and your work. At some point, do you feel you're actually making a dent in there? I mean, at some point, you're pulling your hair out saying, my God, people, what else do I need to do for this to work?
Well, now that you say that, I mean, I had been feeling that I was making a bit of a dent. However, I began to reevaluate that on November 8th.
Yeah. We'll get to that a bit later because I'm sure we won't let you go before you give us your opinion of what happened there. But for now, we'll stick for the book. Of all the falsehoods that you've compiled over time, is there one that really, really gets to you that kind of like, I can't believe I still have to talk about this?
Yeah, it's the last one. The reason that I had the 15th foundational falsehood as the last one, the idea that evolution is just a theory.
Yeah,
because this isn't just ignorance. I mean, it isn't just something that some idiot innocently doesn't know.
You can't handle the truth.
This is being deliberately distorted. Well, in some cases. I mean, in other cases, I can't tell if it is a deliberate lie or is it inexcusable stupidity. Because, for example, it would in that there was the chairman of the Board of Education at one point was complaining that 150 professional scientists had given their testimony to say that the theory of evolution was better supported than the theory of gravity. And she complained that we had demoted gravity to being just a theory when she said that it was a law. Which requires that I then have to teach middle school science to the chairman of the Board of Education, where we explain, list off the Newtonian laws, right, the laws of motion that are contained within Newton's theory of gravity, and then explain how we've got even more laws that are contained within the theory of relativity and how relativity replaced gravity. Why would relativity replace gravity? Because gravity is wrong. Let's teach that controversy.
Every time somebody says something about evolution not containing laws, I'm like, really? What about Mendel's laws? And then I just go on and on. Yeah. So somebody posted that same thing. It's just a theory, blah, blah. I said, it's because they can't spell hypotheses. That's the reason.
That's right.
And it's a funny thing because the science has this rule that you can't prove a theory correct, right? But what a theory is, in a sense, is when a hypothesis is proved to be correct.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It really is. I mean, this is applicable in a number of cases, not all of them. So, I mean, this is not the way that science actually defines this. But in many cases, when you have a hypothesis, and that hypothesis has been so strongly vindicated by additional data and continuous testing, that they eventually just elevate that to a theory. So a theory is a hypothesis that has been proven, and you can't go up from there. You can't go up from the top.
Well, yeah.
And it's hard to explain to people that a theory in science is a field of study or a body of knowledge because they want it to be a blind-ass guess.
Yeah.
The reason that science claims that we can only, provisional conclusions, the reason we can only be 99.999% sure about something is because as soon as you say you're 100% sure about something, you're saying, I'm not willing to change my mind based on new data.
Yeah, absolutely. Even yesterday I was actually out in the town, and I got into the store that I really like to hang a bit once in a while, and I was talking to this Christian couple, this older Christian couple. I know them, and I actually don't know enough to know their names, but we just debated that entire question about evolution, and I had to start to explain to them, evolution is a fact, and that same one came out, it's just a theory. No, and the guy even at some point said, well, if we came down from monkeys, because they always say that.
Why are there still monkeys?
And I had to correct them that we don't come from monkeys.
No, I got to jump in here now.
Oh, okay.
I gotta, because I love it when they say that. If we came from monkeys, then why are there still monkeys? Why are you still a monkey?
Do you understand the words that are coming out of my mouth?
Yeah, that's my answer. Because this threw me into a lot of controversy, and actually, this was a problem for me too. I used to be on your side of this argument, and I argued very, very hotly with a professional systematist over a course of a couple of months, and it got brutal and savage and really unfriendly. However, I did eventually have to concede that he was right, that humans are a subset of apes.
Yeah.
And that apes do not just share a common ancestor with monkeys, but that they actually descend directly from monkeys too. The current line of Cercopithecids, which we have as the only extant Old World monkeys, are a sister group to Hominoidea, which are the apes. But there's an ancestral group called Proplyopithecioidea, which is ancestral to both Cercopiths and hominoids. So it's... And then if you I've quoted Flegel and Delson and all of the other experts in paleoprimatology, and they use the word monkey when they're talking about Apidium, for example, and others like Eosimius, going back into the dawn monkey. So they use monkeys that we descended from, and then you've got things like Egyptopithecus and Proconsul, where Egyptopithecus is described as an ape-like monkey, and Proconsul is described as a monkey-like ape.
You keep using that word. I do not think it means what you think it means.
Okay.
Right? They're all supposed to be in our lineage, more or less. So, yeah, I mean, although this is still a point of controversy because we've been trained to think in another way,
yes.
If you classify things monophyletically, then the monophyletic classification of simian or simiforms and which is also used as this alternate name of anthropoidia. Either one of those, these are the Latin words for monkey. It means that we are monkeys. And since you can never grow out of your ancestry, you never stop being whatever your ancestors were. You may be a modified version of whatever your ancestors were, but you're never going to turn into something they weren't. Or, well, you can turn into something they were. You'll still be what they were, even if they aren't what you are. That's a little bit confusing, because obviously the apes that we descended from aren't human, but we are still apes, even though we become human. We keep all of the parent categories. And I know this is confusing a few people, but
it almost sounds like linguistical semantics in a way.
It's taxonomy.
It is semantics. It really is semantics, because in a lot of languages, there is no separate word for monkey from ape. I mean, if you're talking in Russian, for example, it's the same word. So it really is just semantics.
Okay, so Aron...
And Greek is the same way.
Aron, there's this really, really good video by this really smart guy. I know it's called You're a Fucking Monkey Mate. Have you ever heard of it?
I based my video on that.
But
I made a video called "Turns Out We Did Come from Monkeys."
Yeah, well, that's...
And I would encourage people to look that up, because I give the full explanation of how humans really are monkeys. And snippets of Eddie Izzard's comedy routine are in there. And this, personal story, when I went to Reason Rally back in 2012, Eddie Izzard was speaking there, and I was really upset that they weren't going to give me backstage passes. They give me VIP seating, which I really didn't care about. I wanted the backstage passes because I wanted to meet Eddie Izzard, and I knew this was going to be my only opportunity, and I wanted to have a video camera just to have Eddie Izzard point to me and say, "You're a fucking monkey mate." I wanted that on my video series.
Well, it was your video that I was actually talking about, and your video actually changed my mind, because it made a really good point about when people think about the differences between apes and monkeys. Monkeys have tails, but there are monkeys that don't have tails. Like if you ask most people, like
my brother,
what's the difference between? Well, Kevin, what's the difference between a monkey and an ape? Anybody other than Aron want to answer that question?
No, not really.
So my understanding is that it usually has to do with the tail, and there has something to do with the shoulder joint rotation. And
the second part is correct.
Yeah, exactly. But the tail thing, there are tailless monkeys out there, right? So really, the differences are just so tiny. And most people who argue that, the whole monkey ape thing, they have no idea what they're talking about. So you completely changed my mind on that, and I've had so many debates just simply by posting that video, and man, do people get pissed off.
There's another one about calicites, because a lot of people will say that Cercopiths, being all of the extant old world monkeys, have these calicites, or how else would I describe these? Butt pads.
Inconceivable!
Yeah, they're saying that old world monkeys have these, and the living old world monkeys do. However, there are some of the lesser apes that have them too. So it's not consistent, and therefore it's not definitive. And there's no reason to believe that, since New World monkeys do not have these, and New World monkeys are actually more primitive than Old World monkeys are, their division was a lot further ago, then there's no reason to believe that calicites were ever present on the common ancestor either.
And of course, it's not something that would be preserved in the fossil record either.
Well, there isn't a huge fossil record when it comes to primates in general, right? So they're pretty rare.
Yeah, you think that. While it is true that there's not a huge fossil record, there have been no less than 50 species of apes, non-human apes, non-hominoid or non-hominine. They're not like Australopiths or Paranthropines. They're not in the human line. But there's 50 species of apes known in the fossil record that do not exist today.
10 million years ago, correct me if I'm wrong here, 10 million years ago, there were 50 living at the same time.
Yes.
That's my understanding. So
interesting.
Yeah.
And they did recently find the oldest primate, I believe, again, correct me if I'm wrong, is about 55 million years ago, and it's called Archidibus Achilles or something like that. It's actually no. The oldest primate. Remember, if you're saying primate, that's going a lot further. Primate ancestor.
Okay, if you're going to primate, that's the bigger category that includes apes and monkeys, and also lemurs, tarsiers, and prosimians. Those are lemurs. But you remember that what is her name? Ida was 47 million years old.
Yeah. What do you know?
Oh wait, you said
55 million years. So it's called
ago. Gotcha,
Archibus or Archibus. I can't pronounce any of this shit. Anyways, Archibus Achilles. That's what the name is. So that's my understanding of the oldest primate ancestor is 55 million years ago. So
barely a primate at all. But
absolutely. Yeah, no, absolutely. It was like this tiny little tree thing.
Egyptopithecus?
Now, the problem with religious belief and the rejection of the science is not that they don't understand it. It's not just that they've never heard it. Because when they say there's no transitional species, you will find out quickly that they know the whole list of transitional species. They know about them all, but they have to systematically eliminate every single one of them because it is a dishonest ploy where they need to find some excuse not to believe it. So the way science works, you come up with a hypothesis or let's say a speculative postulation. Do you want to explain something? And then you're going to go test that hypothesis because in order to be a hypothesis, it has to be testable. And so you find evidence you already have to have evidence to support your conclusion before you even begin. Religion already has a difference. They don't have any evidence to support them. They just make the postulation, screw the evidence, and then they go find whatever can seem to line up with that and deliberately discard or reject everything that they know doesn't line up with that. And of course, science can't do that. You have to have the evidence to start with, and then you start testing to see if you're wrong, which means you're working again completely opposite from religion. And that's why we never prove anything. We never say it's conclusively proven absolute truth like religion says. Quite the opposite. Well, we've never proven it wrong.
I'd like to know what excuses you hear from people because I hear some of the funniest shit. Like when I talk about Homo habilis, Homo ergaster and erectus, and Homo heidelbergensis and Neanderthal, they say, oh, they're just handicapped apes. I'm like, seriously? That's the worst excuse I ever heard.
Yeah, well, when you compare skulls of different breeds of dogs, like if you compare a Great Dane and a Boston Terrier, for example, I mean, the skulls are bizarre looking. The Boston Terrier wouldn't even look like a dog. It looks like some sort of an alien. But, people will readily accept that these are both the same species. And there's a whole different collection of dog skulls that don't look anything like each other. And if paleontologists had found these, they wouldn't recognize them as one species. They would recognize them as 30 different species.
Yeah.
But when you get to the hominoids, or the hominines, their skulls almost exactly the same. Because when you get into hominine, the human line, which includes the Australopiths and the Paranthropines and such, you no longer have that sagittal crest, right? So they all have the smooth top dome. They all have the same type skull. And so there's so precious little difference that very often creationists can't identify what the hell, whether it's ape or whether it's human. They want to divide it. They want to make sure it's 100% on that side or 100% on this side. But they keep contradicting themselves.
Yeah, they disagree.
I think it was the Toomai skull that was shown to 3 different creationists, and one said it was 100% ape, the other one said it was 100% human, and then Dwayne Gish was shown the same skull 6 years apart. He was shown one skull and then shown the exact same skull 6 years later, and he identified it as 100% ape the first time and 100% human the second time.
Well, it's not an exact science, right?
but seriously, like,
they just have to make believe. That's what it really is.
Yeah.
It is willful dishonesty. It is lying. It is pretend. It is the I'm going to use a Kent Brockman word, avoision.
Professor, without knowing precisely what the danger is, would you say it's time for our viewers to crack each other's heads open and feast on the goo inside?
But do they not strike you kind of like as con artists when you speak with them like up front? Like that's my opinion every time I meet them.
Yeah, they're making money off it too, right?
Aron, I gotta ask you a really an important question. In your almost expert opinion, I should say, the reason why you see the classic, from ancestors, and they become more and more bipedal. Did this happen because the guy in the line, the guy behind him, he stood up real fast because the guy behind him was Homo erectus?
Actually, no, I understand the joke and everything, but I want to clarify that too. A lot of people make this mistake, and they think we evolved from quadrupedal chimps or gorillas or something. Mm-mm. But if you look at what would be the more basal karyotype, that would be like orangutans, right? Orangutans are largely bipedal. And then if you look at the lesser apes, which would be karyotypic of their ancestors, they are entirely bipedal. So because of their distended, the really long arms, it was ridiculous for them to try to walk. Their arms are so long that if they walked around on all fours, they'd still be standing up.
Yeah, you know how they tell, like the back actually adjusts in the women so that they can, when they're pregnant, you know how you get the hip tilt? That's how you can tell that they walked upright, specifically.
I still don't know which one was first bipedal. It was either Sahelanthropus genensis or Orientingenensis. I'm sure I butchered the shit out of that.
Was
but I wasn't sure which one was which.
Yeah, now see, this is we have those two which might have begun the gorilla line, right? And so we know that there are some quadrupeds back there, and it led to quadrupeds. But at the same time, the gibbons are bipedal and the orangutans are bipedal, and there's a good chance that our ancestry, at least at that time, was half, or at least half and half. So it was walking mostly bipedal in the trees and such, at least most of the time. This is why you have, with Lucy, you have the foramen magnum, which is the hole that goes into the bottom of the skull. In chimpanzees, that hole comes in from the back of the skull, but in humans, it comes in from underneath the skull. And, of course, in Australopiths, it comes in halfway between those 2 points.
Well, and they talk about chimpanzees, like we came from chimpanzees, and, the split happened, give or take, 7 million years ago. Yeah. Chimps didn't exist back then. Neither did bonobos. They're like 2 million years old.
Exactly.
But like you said, when you go back, we split off with the orangutans, and then we split off with the gorillas, or vice versa. I don't remember.
Well, we split off.
And it looks like it looks like that at that time, the line that led to actually two different lines. The lines that led to gorillas and the line that led to chimpanzees both went quadruped. And I'm just inclined to think that we were always quasi-bipedal that entire time. One of the definitive characteristics, by the way, of anthropoids or simiforms or monkeys is that they are bipedal dominant. So even if you go back into the monkey line, they're all bipedal dominant.
I guess it's a question of environment, right? I mean, for example, we're bipeds, but if we start climbing a mountain, we use all fours half the time, right? As soon as we're climbing a hill.
Well, have you seen the treadmill experiment, Kevin?
No, I've not.
They basically had experiments done with treadmills where you're quadrupedal or bipedal, and you burn way less calories being bipedal. So obviously it's an advantage, and there's some.
Are you saying I should do my exercise on 4 legs now?
Yeah, you need to lose some weight there, Tubby. No, but one thing I'm unsure about is that when this whole supposed bipedal thing developed, is there a correlation between the I guess flora in Africa disappearing, like the trees actually disappearing, or is that something that is kind of outdated?
Tall grass coming into view.
They talked about the savanna, out of the savanna hypothesis, and they were talking about we come down from the trees and then everything turns into a savanna, so we had to make this arboreal to terrestrial transition. And I think that's fairly accurate, and people thought that Ardipithecus somehow changed all that, but it didn't. I mean, Ardipithecus falls right in line with what those predictions were. The problem is, every time you find a new fossil, every time there's anything, any fossil found that seems to be in the human evolutionary line, the newspapers have to say that whatever it is causes all scientists to rethink their theories.
That's it, man. Game over, man. It's game over. What the fuck are we gonna do now?
Sensationalism, yeah.
Oh, like
has to, yeah.
Homo naledi, where they said it rewrites the human tree. No, it doesn't. It was predicted by the human tree. You just stick it right there. See, done.
Exactly. There's only been in the last 50 years or so, at least in my lifetime, there's only been one that rewrites human ancestry the way they're talking about. And it's not even our ancestry.
Which?
He said Ken Ham.
Well, he's a transitional fossil, isn't he?
That's too good. I gotta give the points for that one.
Yeah, he's unable to complete that transition. That's the problem.
Totally different monster.
So which one is it, Aron?
Homo floresiensis.
Oh, the Hobbit. See, I told you guys the Lord of the Rings was based on a true story. Nobody believes me.
Those things are anthropological freaks.
Well, but it's
they do change a lot of what we originally understood. They used tools. They built fires, and yet they had these tiny little brains. And this is the one that creationists like to say, well, these are just people that had microcephaly, right? 14 microcephalics living together in a community.
unstopable.
Oh no, it's Foster's.
That's
it's
pushing
Foster's,
it a little bit.
Well, you know,
They had
our
to bring
brains
up-
are actually getting smaller right now. It's like that isn't so much an indicator of intelligence necessarily.
Well, it's more about amount of neurons, I think. I mean,
Yeah.
there's plenty of animals out
Density.
there with big ass brains, and they're idiots. Are you guys, other than Aron, because he knows more about this shit than I do, are you guys familiar with Foster's rule or the Islands rule?
No.
Well, the same place where they found Homo floresiensis, I can't say it, they found midget elephants. So basically, when you live in a place and you have a high amount of predators and low amount of food that's available,
resources,
you get smaller, right? Obviously, so then you don't have to eat as much and that sort of thing. And then vice versa also works. Where
there
you
was a
get
whole
bigger.
island like that, right, Tyler?
Well, that's what we're talking about.
So
That's where these hobbits were found.
Oh, okay, I got you now.
Yeah, and they found the elephants too, right?
Guys, Aron's trying to chime in here. Let him speak.
Yeah.
He's the guest.
Oh yeah.
Go ahead.
They found lots of islands like that. I mean, there are birds on some islands that just grew to ridiculous sizes, but in the island that he's talking about, it's not just that the humans were tiny and the elephants were tiny. The rats and the lizards were enormous.
Yeah, the
so
predators.
lizards were big enough to eat people whole.
You mean like monitor lizard style, or?
Yes, monitor lizards just much bigger than what we have now.
Wow.
Dragons.
So like in the 20-foot range.
What is this, 90,000 years ago starting? Up to, I think, 1.1 million years ago, I think is the oldest tools anyways. From what I remember, they went extinct.
Oh, okay. So you're talking about the Flores. I was thinking about the lizards. No, Floresiensis, surprisingly, the last cache that they have, or the only cache that they have for these people, was 13,000 years ago.
Oh, okay. I thought it went back
So
to 90.
very recent.
Yeah.
20 foot
And there's a lot of people that, of course, still say that those people are still out there, or that there were reports that they supposedly saw them recently, but who knows what they were talking about? There's no way to verify
Orang
this.
Pandek. Have you heard that before?
No.
Orang Pandek. It's like Bigfoot, but
the South Asian Bigfoot.
Yes.
Which is actually a smaller.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. Well, the thing about Floresiensis that makes it so bizarre is that all humanity evolved from Homo erectus. Right, I mean, you have prior to that, you have Homo rudolfensis and Homo
habilis.
Yes, thank you, the handyman. But all living humanity and the Neanderthals too all evolved from Homo erectus, and so it was assumed that Homo floresiensis must have evolved from erectus as well. But floresiensis has a bone in the wrist that none of the erectines have, that Neanderthals don't have, that modern humans don't have. Only Australopiths have these. So this is either an atavism that somehow reoccurred and remained in the subsequent stock, or they were never evolved from erectus. They were evolved earlier. So that their split comes earlier. So that they are they're so far away from modern human as possible to be, and possibly even further, because they evolved from Australopiths rather than Homo habilis or Homo rudolfensis, then they wouldn't technically even be human, unless we move the categorization of human back to include the Australopiths.
Yeah.
Is it just you said there was a bone in the wrist, and what was the other difference?
I'm trying to remember because I read somewhere about a second bicuspid, but I can't remember if that was legitimate. That might have, I may have to look that up.
And these poor things were being chased by 20-foot lizards.
Yeah,
Wow.
there's some some people have a 13th set of of ribs, cervical ribs, right? Like, would that classify you as not human if you had that?
No. It's not that you acquired a new trait that no longer makes you human. It's what you evolved from. What is your ancestry? Mm-hmm. So if the categorization or the category human begins with Homo rudolfensis, Homo habilis, which may be in fact the same thing, right? And then from them, of course, you get Homo erectus and Homo heidelbergensis, which then begat Neanderthals, modern humans, and so forth. They have all these little different subdivisions, which probably have more names than they really deserve.
Yeah.
Because it's possible that all of these things were chemically interfertile and might even have intermingled.
Like dogs now, right?
Well, no, not like dogs. Dogs are a freak show. Dogs will mate with stuffed animals or your kneecap. They don't.
Well, the beauty here is that we got like genetic science is like so far advanced from like when we started looking at fossils to determine what was happening, right? Like we can understand and trace it back a lot better with more accuracy than we could back, say, 50 years ago or whatever.
A good way to explain this, I mean, I used to love that show Red Dwarf. It's a British science fiction. Have you seen that one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, well, there's that one guy who evolved from cats.
Yes.
Okay, and so Holly described, or the computer described it to Lister, saying that this guy is descended from cats. His ancestors were cats. He is a cat. So it doesn't matter what new traits you develop. You may have a subcategory, but you're still going to be ancestrally cat. Your parent clade is still cat.
Well, yeah, then we're all ancestrally.
If your family were cats.
Bacteria.
So if these people, if Homo floresiensis, what we now call hobbits, which I don't think is a fair name for them, but if they evolved from what we classify as Homo, they were Homo. But if they come from an earlier group, then we need to devise a new subcategory of Australopith, or we need to reclassify Australopiths as humans.
Well, yeah, but where do you stop in a line like this?
Yeah.
I mean, you're saying you classify them like the cat example. His ancestors were a cat. But if you go farther along, past Homo, past Australopithecus, then you can start saying that we're also fish, right?
Yeah,
you're way back.
You're inner fish.
Well, the words fish and reptile always come up when we talk about monophyletic classifications.
They don't exist.
The thing is that fish doesn't have a working definition. And people will often say that fish are, the things that live in water, which of course that doesn't work. There's lots of things that live in water that clearly are not fish, and there's things that are called fish which don't fit anybody's classification of fish. And there are fish who can warm their blood, and there's fish who have legs. There are fish who don't have fins or scales. So when you try to classify fish, the only consistent thing that you can get for what we traditionally think of as fish is that fish have gills, but then they're not the only things that do.
Okay, but
we have tetrapods that have gills that are not fish.
Yeah. Eventually, though, you're going to reach a point where
what it comes down to is if you want to classify life forms, you kind of have to, if you're going to use a monophyletic classification, you have to throw the word fish away because it doesn't have a classification. It's not consistent.
Yeah.
So the word chordate, because not all fish have backbones either. Fish are what we call fish are very, very primitive group. But they can be chordates, so that they have the beginnings of a spinal cord, or what they call a notochord, but not a spine in it, nor a skull, nor jaws either. So, I think they do have. I may be getting them jumbled in my head. They might have skulls, but not jaws.
Yeah, this
so reptile is another one. Reptile is one that is an old Linnaean classification. It's a grade where they said, okay, well, a reptile is something that's cold-blooded, has claws and scales, and is I can't remember what the other classifications.
Sounds like my Aunt Sophie.
But we have reptiles that we know are actually technically reptiles by other criteria that don't have claws or don't have scales or that can warm their blood. And of course, if you evolve to adapt some new ability, then you've got something that's limited by a classification, or let's say but that doesn't have this. So you start making arbitrary restrictions.
Yeah.
So if you're going to categorize any collective, you have to start with everything that's already universally accepted as part of that set, and find the common characters that are shared by all of them, without making special exceptions for certain ones. And then you can figure out, once you have the category of everything that really fits that, does some new addition belong there?
Well,
and so reptile again has to be thrown out. Now, I was using reptile I was using the classification Diapsidae to be synonymous with reptile, but reptilomorph is actually older than Diapsidae, and it includes some other things that we didn't traditionally consider reptiles. And one of the reasons they moved it back to reptilomorph was because there was a controversy, and I think that controversy is still going on, as to whether turtles are reptiles or not. Because if diapsid is what a reptile is, then turtles were argued were not diapsids. Now it seems that there's recent fossil finds, which I was disappointed by, that imply that turtles may be diapsids, a subset of diapsids that have just... I'm confusing the hell out of people here.
Well,
I had a question there.
That's the reason creationists can't do this. It's just too complicated.
It is complex.
Which is why I say first came fish, then amphibians, then reptiles, then mammals, and everything in
the
between.
Turtle thing a little bit. When turtles emerged, roughly, 250, 300 million years ago, when turtles emerged, there was a whole lot of stuff living on the land that ain't anything like what we've got now. And they weren't any of the lineages that we have now. There was a couple of other groups, cotylosaurs and anapsids, that are now entirely extinct. And there was some argument that turtles might be the last living anapsids. And the most recent, there were some fossils that were indicating that this might be the case. The most recent one implies that no, they're actually a convergent subset of diapsids and not the last living anapsids, which means that anapsids are completely extinct. But there was some interesting stuff back there that nobody knows about, because the only thing that people know about fossil fauna is the little plastic dinosaurs that you get in that bag at the grocery store. Yeah. That's it, right? They have no idea. There's tens of thousands of fossil species that we know about that the common people don't know dick about. Mm-hmm. And some of these anapsids were really impressive. I mean, rhinoceros size turtles on with no shell, essentially, something like that.
Okay, wouldn't it be fair to say that, like you can start, like say there's a branch, you got a fork, and humans and something else branch off. There must become a point where they cannot mate together anymore. Even humans wouldn't be able to mate with their original ancestors. So it's kind of like picture like a slide rule with a window. You got the leading edge of it being humans as they advance through time, and eventually the previous ancestor is not compatible with them anymore. And then across the two species, they won't be compatible anymore. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I also want to throw out that it's not just chemical interfertility that determines speciation, because it has not been confirmed whether humans are chemically interfertile with chimpanzees or not. The reason that it hasn't been confirmed is, honestly, I don't think anybody wants to know the answer to that question.
Except for Russia.
No, there's lots of people.
Russia back in the 1950s.
You wouldn't even have to do it like the mating that we traditionally do. You just have to do it in a test tube.
Well, that's what they did in Russia, yeah.
Now we've done hybrids, test tube hybrids between camels and llamas, for example, which are much more distantly related than humans are with chimpanzees.
Oh, no kidding.
But the thing about it is that we have two species that, regardless whether they can interbreed, they won't. And that also makes the species difference. Like if you get lions and tigers in the wild, will not mate. You lock them in a cage for a while, and there's nothing else.
Well, somebody who's racist won't mate with somebody that they're racist with. It could be
you lock me in. Right? You lock me in a cage with anything for long enough, and I'll end up fucking it.
The comments of Tyler not necessarily those of the valleys of theories, and
that's from Jim Jeffries, so you can't blame me.
Aron, now that you had your first book experience, can we expect a second one to come out eventually from you?
I have some ideas running around in my head about that, and I'm shooting down some ideas as quickly as they copper up. I know I'm going to do another book eventually. I just don't know exactly which direction I'm going with it yet.
Okay. Do you get really complicated with the book, like talking about diapsids and anapsids and that kind of thing?
Well, I do, and I don't mean to get complicated. I think I've kept it all pretty simple, and the reviews...
Simple for you.
Well, I'm thinking...
The chapter that you're talking about, I actually removed 4,000 words from that chapter because I realized, that one chapter that talks about classification, because that's a primary interest of mine. That one chapter was 6,000 words longer than any other chapter, and I realized it's actually quite scientific and dry.
Well, it's
so
something
I cut out quite a bit of it just to keep it down to the level of the laity.
I think it's an interesting discussion between people who actually accept evolution, which we have in my group all the time. But when you're talking to creationists, I always try to focus on the highlights, like synapsids, which are mammal-like reptiles, and Tiktaalik, and obviously the homos that we mentioned, that sort of thing, because... when I start talking to them about anything that's a little too complicated, they just go, God did it, Because that's easier to understand.
Yeah, or with like Tiktaalik or Acanthostega or something like that, they'll say, well, it's just a fish, just a weird fish. Because they don't want to understand, because they don't want to believe. They want to believe something else. Yeah. And if that requires pretend, they're all about that. And I've gotten a lot of people in the course of my career in this who have admitted that they believe what they know is not true, but they believe it anyway because they want to.
Yeah, it's just a reptile that also lactates, or it's just a fish with feet, or Like, what? What do you mean, just?
I am not intelligent enough to understand this, therefore it's impossible.
Yeah. You know, speaking of missing link and not intelligent enough, Aron, have you guys found a missing link in the White House?
Yeah, I think he's been appointed as Secretary of Education.
Aron, what the hell happened there? What?
Don't get me started.
I want to get you started. Go for it.
Yeah, I can't tell you how disappointed I am that that several months ago, I was excited that we were going to have finally. We were going to be. I was traveling traveling the world. I'm seeing all these other countries that got shit better than we do, that are way more efficient than we are. Right, that are more conscious and more capable than we are, and we're all saying, "Oh, we can't afford to do what these piddly-ass little countries do because we're the richest country in the world."
Yeah.
Why the fuck can't we afford to do that shit then? Right. So I mean, we were about to have, we were looking at Bernie.
Huzzah! A man of quality.
Yes.
Right. And we were going to have a national health care system, which would save my ass because you wouldn't believe how much I pay out in insurance. And without Obamacare, by the way, it would not be possible for me to work at home. So when Trump says, "Oh, I'm going to abolish Obamacare," I'm like, "Great! I'll just have to go get a fucking job." That's what it means to me, because then I'm going to have company insurance.
Last time we spoke, you were musing about moving to Canada, Vancouver, or Edmonton. You're still welcome.
I got a little caught in my living room.
Yeah, I actually feel, and I know my wife wants to live someplace else, but I mean, I feel that in this political environment that I am more than ever, I am compelled to stay in the fire. And I know a lot of other people that are so worried about the environment right now that they want to take off their atheist swag off their cars and stuff because they don't want to get vandalized. And I've had a tire slashed, I've had a window smashed, and because I've got atheist bumper stickers, and I'm just going to be louder, bolder, and more obvious because I think that's what's going to have to happen. And there was an election here recently, of course, where somebody running for Senate, I think it was the Senate, said, "Don't vote for my opponent because she's an admitted atheist." I'm like, fuck, I'm going to run for office, and I'm going to be as open atheist as is possible to get. I mean, it's not going to be like what they did to Bernie Sanders, right, where they said, do you believe in God? And he has to say, well, of course I believe in God. The God I believe in is we're all in this thing together, right, which is a beautiful shift of that answer. But it was a sabotaging answer. Yeah. Nobody's even going to ask that of me. I'm president of Atheist Alliance of America. Yes, I am atheist. I don't believe in all that magical mamby-pamby horse shit. Right? Just be as upfront about it as possible. And people are going to want that, I think. By the time my term comes up, when I go run for office, that's going to be 2 years from now. And people by then, I think, are going to be so upset at having all three branches of federal government being fully Republican conservative Christians, right? And all of the damage that always happens whenever you've got them in power, right? I mean, the deficit always goes down with the Democrat and back up with the Republican again. How do people not see these patterns? Mm-hmm. And then when you see what happened with like Bernie Sanders trying to defend or trying to generate benefits and protections for veterans, and then Paul Ryan and all these other Republicans shooting him down at every turn, and yet I know veterans who are Republicans say, "I'll never vote for a damn Democrat." I'm like, well, because you just like supporting your enemies, and you hate having friends trying to help you. What the hell's wrong with these people?
Your rallies are going to be really good.
We did not have a situation where we could spend another 4 years reawakening the coal industry. No, absolutely not. This was our last chance to get back straight. So I'm having to embrace the end of our fucking species now.
Yeah.
And if it isn't brought about by Trump wanting to bomb the shit out of Russia, right? If it's not something like that, because he said in multiple interviews, well, why can't we use nuclear weapons if we have them? If it's not his brain-bending stupidity that brings our end that way, militarily, well, then it's going to be his brain-bending stupidity that brings it about by other means, by exploiting coal and fossil fuels and having no respect at all for people who actually understand things and should have been in charge. Just imagine now, if Bernie Sanders hadn't, and I believe that Bernie Sanders was screwed out of the election. I'm not just from the letters of WikiLeaks. I've been following this forever. I've been following this since it started. There are plenty of things that they did for voter suppression that the DNC has admitted to by this point. So you can stop calling me a conspiracy theorist since they admitted it, right? But Bernie got screwed out of this election, and that was the worst thing they could have done, because I said months ago that Hillary wasn't going to beat Bush. Trump. Because she is so hated by so many that it just causes more of them to go out and vote against her. Yeah. Right? Yep. Regardless whether this is justified or not. Right? There's a lot of hate that's been dumped on her that she doesn't deserve. Some that she does, but a lot that she doesn't. Regardless, she's not your winning candidate. No. Bernie was the winning candidate. Absolutely. Bernie was the one that we could all feel good about. We elect this guy, and all the top economists are on his side. Everybody's saying that his plan is the one that will work. Everybody on the planet is saying that Trump is going to be an absolute failure. And so far, in the first week, where he's not even taken office yet, he's already gone back on several of the promises, fortunately, that he made, because they're all so inflamed stupid.
Backpedaling.
My word. Yeah, but just selecting Mike Pence, right? I would love to sit down and teach middle school science to that asshole.
I think he's the bigger problem.
Yeah. Well, in addition to Pence, I think it's the entire cabinet. It's all of those people that he surrounded himself with: Steve Bannon and Newt Gingrich and Rudy Giuliani. All of those people who together are they're pointing they're pointing the gun toward their own foreheads and our foreheads at the same time. They are just incapable of making decisions that are going to be beneficial to anybody or the planet included.
Mike Pence is Donald Trump's insurance policy, because there ain't nobody gonna fucking shoot Trump, because then you got Pence to deal with.
Yeah, and if it were possible to be worse than Trump, Pence.
Yeah, Pence is.
And that's another reason that Trump came out ahead, is that the Republican Party trotted out this clown car of nothing but ideologues, right? Their best candidate, the one they actually wanted, right? The best that you can say about him is that he was a wuss.
Are you talking about Jeb?
Yes.
Yeah.
The one that the dumber brother than W.
That's a high bar.
Well, Aaron, I'm going to disagree with you just a little bit, because I voted for Bernie in the primaries, and I really felt that he would have been a winning candidate. But having looked at the results and seeing the number of disaffected, low educated people who are in pain deciding the election because they didn't want the establishment. They didn't want either one of those candidates, even though a lot of them in Michigan had voted for Obama 4 years before. They felt, as Trump says, they felt as though they were the forgotten man, and they wanted to shake up Washington and get totally away from the establishment. So I think it was inevitable, unfortunately, that they wanted to vote for the one guy who was supposedly the outsider and would be as far from the establishment as they wanted to go.
And Sanders was further from the establishment than even Trump.
Yeah, but I don't think the people who voted for Trump were necessarily enamored with Bernie for a number of different reasons.
No, they weren't enamored with Trump either.
Yeah, they
just didn't want the typical candidate there. They just wanted an outsider.
Well, yeah, but I think a Jewish socialist was not quite the guy that they wanted in the White House.
The sad thing about Sanders calling himself a socialist is that was the only negative thing anybody could say about him.
Yeah.
And the sad thing is that it wasn't even true.
Yeah.
Sanders identified himself as a democratic socialist because he wanted to emulate Denmark's plan.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
And then the Danish prime minister made a public statement saying, "But we're not a socialist country. We're a free market economy." Yeah. And I'm thinking, it's a human mistake. He's humans, right? He sees this plan. He thinks they're a socialist country, so he identifies as, I'm going with that. That's what I like. But if he hadn't done that, and how do you go back on it? How do you go back and say, well, I was stupid because I didn't know what that country really was? But the thing is, if he had said that he was a market economist, no complaints.
Well, it's
right?
They would know what that means.
Worst thing you can say about him. He's Jewish,
system, yeah.
Which is seemingly appropriate since the guy he's running against is Hitler.
Well, then you just call Hillary a communist, and then throw some mud, and that's all. Yeah.
Well, it's like me saying I'm not a socialist. I just believe in extremely regulated capitalism. Same shit.
Well, we just, no one saw the strength of the Bubba vote coming, and that's what made the difference. The Bubba vote.
Aron, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate everything you've done for us here today. If people want to follow you more and find out more about your book, where can they go?
Well, the book, of course, is available on Amazon.com. The title is Foundational Falsehoods of Creationism. I blog on Pathos under Reason Advocates. And my channel, of course, on YouTube is Aron Ra, right? Aron Ra. That's not, and everybody mispronounces this. It's not Aaron. It's not Aron Ra.
I corrected everybody earlier today. I said it's Aron, not Aaron.
Yeah, Aron Ra. And I don't know what else to say about how to point people to me. Oh, my Twitter, if anybody cares, is ARON_Ra. Somebody made a Twitter for me just so that I would have it if I ever wanted it. But by the time I wanted it, I couldn't find the password. And you can't contact Twitter. So there's another ARONRA Twitter out there with 400 some odd subscribers that has never tweeted and never will.
Trump could help you find that.
What about an audiobook? I thought I saw you post on your Facebook.
I did record the audiobook with David Smalley. It's I think it's like 16 hours.
Are you talking about the fundamental?
Yeah, that's the book you just released.
Okay, well, I just wonder, and I'm blind, so I kind of need the
Foundational Falsehoods of Creationism is available on Audible.
Oh,
and,
good.
And as I said, I had a great deal of fun recording that, and Smalley kept up the professional production standard, so I think it turned out really, really well.
And the bloopers. I heard the bloopers as well.
Oh, I gotta hear that.
We won't discuss those. Those didn't happen.
So you heard it here first in Canada, for Canadians anyway, that Aron Ra is actually going to be having a political career. I can't wait to see that. That's going to be absolutely awesome. And Aron, like I said, we've been authorized here at Left of the Valley by the Prime Minister to offer you asylum should you ever decide to come up here for the next 4 years. All you have to remember is we have stronger beer, and you have to prefer hockey over football for the next 4 years.
Hockey sucks.
Tyler?
Be quiet.
That's enough out of you.
Lacrosse is our national sport. Screw you guys.
We're going to hit him over the head with hockey sticks now.
Thank you so much, Aron. Hope to talk to you soon. Hope to have you soon back here in the country.
Yeah, come drink beer with us again. That was fun.
Thank you very much. Looking forward to it as soon as I can.
And that was our friend Aron Ra. Always love having Aron on the show. He's a fantastic interview, and we look forward to seeing more of him in the new year. Time for my rant. Now, November 11th just happened. I hope you took the time to thank a soldier. I wish we lived in a world that would make their job obsolete, but being that our society is in its infancy, and most of us still believe that a divine magic man takes sides in the dispute, I don't see that happening. It seems a soldier and the sacrifice he or she makes is still necessary. November 11th is one of those sacred cows for Canadians. We like to show our gratitude to our fallen soldiers and thank them knowing that their sacrifice allows us to move on, allows me to say these words. And although I like to participate in the ceremony honoring them, I find myself having a harder time doing it. What really disturbs me the most is the blatant Christian overtones of the ceremony. Now I know that many soldiers were Christians, but as I look upon the soldiers on stage in the ceremony, some of them are Caucasian, some are black, some are Indian, some Asians. This Christian appeal to their carpenter God leaves a bad taste in my mouth. Doesn't this fly straight into the face of our multicultural values as Canadians? Now I know I'm not supposed to rock the boat with this sacred cow, but isn't it time that the ceremony of November 11th reflect the secular multicultural nature of Canada? Are we not ignoring the non-Christian soldiers when we invoke the Christian God? Was her sacrifice any less significant? It's hard to maintain a sense of harmony amongst Canadians when we insist upon thanking a God over another. In that sense, religion does what it's always done best. It divides us. Whether it's a politician putting up a nativity scene for Christmas or a priest giving out a prayer on November 11th, we're sending a loud message to those Canadians who don't believe in a Jewish carpenter God. You don't matter. I think it's high time to drop religious messages in public ceremonies. Either include them all or drop them all. It's about being fair to all Canadians, not just Christians. It's the Canadian way, the reason these soldiers sacrificed. And that takes us to the end of our show. I want to thank you all for being with us today. I want to thank our guest, Aron Ra. I also want to thank everybody that was on the show, Nancy and Tyler and Kevin. Guys, you were awesome as usual. Thank you so much for being with us. Coming up next week, we have a show. Oh, I forget what we have. That's just me. Anyway, we do have Damien Mary at Hope coming up soon. On the December 3rd, we also have a debate. Christian Chris versus Gemma Page. We'll be talking about the resurrection of Jesus, or the historicity of Jesus, one of them. Around the 10th of December, we'll have... we'll be talking about our old friend David Fitzgerald. We'll be talking about St. Paul. And of course, on the 17th, we'll have the Christmas special. And that'll take us towards the end of the year. I'm also thinking of doing a top 10 best of the year for Left of the Valley. So I hope you'll join us for this. Thank you so much for joining us, guys. Until next time.
On your ass or taking a nap when somebody you love is fucked up and needs your help bad. How can you justify the genocide and pain caused by your code? There must be something missing in your brain. I'm proud to be an atheist, a skeptic, a non-believer, an infidel, a heathen. I call it how I see it. I say it's ignorance and you just call it faith and unsubstantiated claims. That's something to be ashamed. I'm an atheist. I'm an atheist. I'm an atheist. I'm an atheist. It amazes me how perfectly intelligent people can reach the conclusion that all non-believers are evil. What a fucked up statement. Do you realize what you're saying? But according to your book, this is how your God made me. Skeptical of anything that contradicts history, denies evolution, hates science, promotes mystery. I'd rather see the truth than to bask in my own ignorance. Rather be alone than surrounded by damn idiots. As long as there's a breath in my body, you can bet your last dollar I'll be working hard fighting this problem. Religion is a disease, it comes from culture, only true on a regional scale. Science is universal. Are you to say that Horus isn't real, but Jesus is? Or Zeus, Thor, Mithra, Vishnu, you don't believe in them? I think the reason is apparent. You do what you're told and believe in the God assigned by your parents. I'm proud to be an atheist, a skeptic, a non-believer, an infidel, a heathen. I call it how I see it. I say it's ignorance and you just call it faith and unsubstantiated claims. That's something to be ashamed. I'm an atheist. I'm an atheist. I'm an atheist. I'm an atheist. Now let me take a sec. Don't mean to sound so hateful, but I swear to God, pun intended, I find it disgraceful that thousands of children are raped by priests, and since they're holy men of God, they get away scot-free. And the Pope does his very best to keep it on the hush. Don't wanna affect business, he loves money too much. We know that they love the kids, but how the fuck can we protect them while they planning to molest them? We teaching them to respect them.
Fuck that.
The system is broke down, working backwards, and the only action or tactic I plan to practice now is to attack them. The parties of God's hands are bloodstained, millions of murders by believers, and they're all in God's name. And let me take a sec, don't mean to sound so hateful, but I swear to God, pun intended, I find it disgraceful that many atheists are told to be quiet. You're not alone, speak your mind, time to let it be known. I'm proud to be an atheist, a skeptic, a non-believer, an infidel, a heathen. I call it how I see it. I say it's ignorance and you just call it faith and unsubstantiated claims. That's something to be ashamed. I'm an atheist. I'm an